Hello and welcome to Hump Day, everybody. I hope you are doing okay. Maybe you limped into Wednesday. Maybe you skipped in. Maybe you're just here. Either way, I'm very happy to have you. Thank you very much for pressing play on today's episode of Stand Up. I've got the brilliant and hilarious Dr. Andrea Jones-Rooy back for her second appearance on the show, and hopefully she'll become a regular because she's great. She's a podcast host, globally touring stand-up comedian, and she's a trained acrobat. But for our purposes, she's also a data scientist. Very smart, very funny, very worldly, and real good at just rolling with the punches. Another great conversation with Dr. Andrea Jones-Rooy you will love. And our conversation begins at 22 minutes. But right now, I've got a whole bunch of headlines and a clip show. So let's get to it. I can't do it without you. Patreon.com/Pete Dominic, Substack.com @StandUpWithPete. Same thing on YouTube and all of the rest. Watch the interviews live. Join the Discord platform. There are no ads on this show. I depend on your paid subscription, so please think about signing up now, or you can pay more if you're getting more out of the show. You're realizing that. You can always upgrade or edit your pledge, as Patreon puts it. All right, let's get after it. Here we go. Yesterday was a wild one in the news, that's for sure. First of all, if you're paying attention during the day instead of working or retiring or anything else, you saw that Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, was on Capitol Hill testifying in front of one committee, and then you looked over and you saw the acting Attorney General and the former personal attorney of our dear leader. It was Todd Blanche. He was on maybe another screen of yours, so that was a lot of news that the two of them made just alone. Found out last night that Scott Pelley got fired from CBS News for speaking out, and the editor, the boss at CBS News, her name is Barry Weiss. You probably heard of her. She demanded an apology, and I don't think so. He's not going to apologize, and so they fired him. And now I bet you nobody watches 60 Minutes anymore. I don't know. It'll be real interesting to see what happens to that show, much less that network. But I guess probably the biggest story yesterday was it was primary day in a whole bunch of states. And friends of the show, both Ryan Bussey in Montana and Zach Walls in Iowa, were up for election. Zach came up short out in Iowa, running in the Iowa Senate Democratic campaign, and that was really disappointing to see. He certainly won the vast majority of folks living in cities and liberal-minded people, but he lost in the rural areas. Zach, of course, we learned about when he went viral when he was a young man, like 19, advocating for marriage equality because he has two moms and has been going viral ever since. I've gotten to know him really well. But Josh Turek was able to beat him last night in Iowa, and it does look like Ryan is going to squeak away with the win in Montana, although that has not been decided as of yet. Obviously, everybody focused on California, the governor, and the high-profile mayoral race there. Looks like Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass will advance to the November runoff, and I just don't understand what that runoff looks like, but she beat Spencer Pratt handily, but there was a third candidate in the race, also liberal, and so she got a lot of votes as well and came in third, but I'll figure that out after the news headlines. And the primary in the gubernatorial race, still too close to call, and they count ballots there for a long time. Early results show Steve Hilton, the Republican, coming in first, but Xavier Becerra, and Tom Steyer come in second and third and have a combined many more votes than Steve Hilton. So if it was one of them versus Steve Hilton, likely the Democrat would win in November. But a lot remains in the high-stakes gubernatorial race in California. It's still too close to call, and early results show this a real tight contest in a very crowded race, which takes me to other headlines. At one point during a hearing yesterday where the Secretary of State Marco Rubio was, he blurted out, "The war is over, bro." Not quite like that, but that's what I heard. And then the war continued all day with explosions at bases in Kuwait, American targets being fired upon, Americans firing on foreign targets or on Iranian targets. So, yeah, I mean, easy for him to say, I guess, in an air-conditioned room in Washington, D.C. But U.S. emergency oil reserve approaching all-time low is another headline that I read yesterday for a new round of U.S.-mediated talks on ending the war while there were strikes on Lebanon and Israel. Israeli drone strikes on southern Lebanon yesterday killed 8 people, including a father and his son and daughter, a day after U.S. President Donald Trump said Israel and Hezbollah agreed to dial back the fighting. That is from the New York Times. Hezbollah launched on northern Israel targets, no injuries. And more Russian-imposed bloodshed in Ukraine. Russia launched hundreds of drones and dozens of missiles against Kyiv and other Ukrainian cities overnight, killing at least 22 civilians, wounding 138 others. I mentioned that yesterday. I think these are the same strikes, but new numbers. And they're worse, obviously. Several of you sent me this headline. The Trump administration is dismantling a $368 million deep ocean observation system that was put in place a decade ago to monitor coastal environments, marine ecosystems, and powerful currents that affect the global climate. So it would seem that if you paid attention to that space and those news headlines, that the federal government is dismantling different apparatuses and different organizations and different machines and unplugging things that monitor pollution especially, and anything else that might help renewable energy or scientists determine what is going on, and basically putting a blindfold and earmuffs on all of us so that the fossil fuel industry can continue to do what it wants to do. That is my interpretation. I also believe we can fix all that and have the opportunity to upgrade and make it better when we take back over. Most of you are probably rolling your eyes at me for my optimism, and you're probably right, but that's where I'm at, and that's what I'm going to work on, despite that pessimism and whether or not it's realistic. Oh, and maybe a tiny bit of good news or a little tiny step forward, because yesterday Gasolini signed an executive order that asked technology companies to voluntarily give the government oversight new artificial intelligence models before releasing them to the public. This is a shift for the administration. It had promoted a hands-off approach to the powerful technology. But if the federal government is being run by the fascists, what does that mean? You know, it's another question. 7 Democratic-controlled states yesterday, we learned, sued the Trump administration over its move to block a planned wind farm off of the coast of New York, which is a big development. The bedbugs are in the agricultural department building, which is really upsetting because they're the agency who's responsible for containing and mitigating the spread of invasive pests in the U.S. And a lot of them are pissed because they used to be able to work from home. We have a listener whose wife, Sean, if you're out there listening today, his wife explained this to me. She worked for the ag department remotely, and then they were told to report back to work when Trump took back over, but they didn't have a place to go to anymore because they'd sold the building already, some building, and it's got bed bugs. So awful. All right. Well, those are most of the headlines that I've gathered for you today. And send me yours, standupwithpete@gmail.com. Send me your clips too, because it's time to get to the clip show. Got a bunch of good ones for you. Let's see how many I can get to. First, let's start with some comedy, and I'm going to introduce you to a stand-up comedian named Matty Kelly, who's very funny and very good and has a huge following, and shouldn't at this – she looks like she's in her 20s. I don't know. I wasn't familiar with her, but I'm very impressed. Thought it was very funny. You should follow her and support her. Here she is.
Remember when he said "quiet piggy" to that woman? A female reporter asked him a question. He said, "Quiet piggy." I wouldn't say that to a pig. I wouldn't say that to a pig that was being really fucking loud. And I needed it to be quiet. Also, he said that because she asked if he was in the Epstein files. Brother, you are the Epstein files. This is like the most well-documented friend group of all time. All these guys do is hang out and take pictures together. They're like sorority girls. There's more pictures of Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, and Jeffrey Epstein than there is of me, my mom, and my dad. Also, all these photos had to be taken in the 90s. That means someone had to bring a camera, take the photo, develop the photo, and then keep it somewhere safe. People are always like, men don't make strong enough friendships. Look what happens when they do. Those guys did everything together. They went on vacation. They wrote each other birthday cards. If my boyfriend wrote his male friend a birthday card, I would break up with him. I'm not jealous. I would know he's up to something.
Oh, it's so good. I really thought that was very funny. And then her facial expressions that she makes. Matty Kelly, check her out. Enjoy, has some laughs. And let's move on to something way less funny, but very smart. This is a James Tellerico cut. It's not new, I don't think, but it's a great, very brief explanation, about 90-second debunking of school vouchers, certainly as how they work in Texas. He does a great job at this, so I thought I'd share it.
Greg Abbott is selling this private school voucher scam. Greg Abbott is selling this private school voucher scam by calling it school choice. But it's not school choice. It's the school's choice, because private schools can deny admission to any kid for any reason they want. So how is it choice when the private school has all the power? How is it choice when a majority of counties in the state of Texas don't have a single private school in them? How is it choice when private schools don't have to provide transportation or special education services? And how is it choice when the voucher doesn't even cover the full cost at most private schools in Texas? If you gave my former students on the west side of San Antonio a $10,000 voucher, there's still no way they could afford a $20,000 a year private school. But here's the catch. The wealthy parent who is already sending their kid to a $20,000 a year private school is about to get a $10,000 discount, a $10,000 coupon at our expense. Vouchers are welfare for the wealthy. And by taking money out of our public schools and giving it to wealthy parents who don't need it, vouchers would be a massive, historic transfer of wealth from the bottom to the top. And the last thing I'll say, there are a lot of self-proclaimed Christians pushing these voucher scams. I can't think of anything more un-Christian than stealing from the poor to give to the rich.
Oh, it's so good. Such a great explainer. And now here's James Tellerico more recently. I think this is yesterday on the campaign trail, since he's gotten the nomination and the Republicans have decided on who their candidate's going to be, which is that one-eyed corrupt lunatic. So creepy. I don't know what's wrong with his eye. Maybe he has an eye. I don't care. He's the worst. Here's Tellerico.
Paxton's mugshot was taken just a few miles from here at the Collin County Courthouse, where he was indicted for investment. He convinced his own friends to invest hundreds of thousands of dollars into a tech company. But what he didn't tell them was that he was making a commission off their investments. He was scamming his own friends. If Ken Paxton will sell out his own friends for a quick buck, what makes you think he won't sell you out in the United States Senate? Listen, Ken Paxton has accountability, but accountability is coming on November 3rd.
Great stuff from Tellerico on the campaign trail. He is good on the stump, as they say. Good on the stump. Okay, I should have mentioned this yesterday in the headlines, but Commander Fatton yesterday appointed Bill Pulte, this guy who leads the Federal Housing Finance Agency, is a real bootlicker, as acting director of national intelligence to replace Tulsi Gabbard. I mentioned this yesterday on Threads. I said the new director of intelligence has absolutely zero experience in intelligence, national security, military affairs, or anything that would be relevant to the job. One of the most important national security jobs in the world is now held by a finance bro, henchman, and bootlicker. But here's a little report from MS Now that includes a quote from Democratic Senator Mark Warner to begin with.
If I was concerned about Tulsi Gabbard, Bill Pulte raises those concerns tenfold.
President Trump named a new acting director of national intelligence, and Democrats fear that this person could try to help Trump steal the midterm elections this fall. That's an extraordinary allegation. It's based in part on the person who had this job before. That was Tulsi Gabbard. And she used the position to try to back Trump's claims the 2020 election was stolen. And the new person who's taking over this job is named Bill Pulte. He has no intelligence experience. Right now, he runs the Federal Housing Agency. But he did contribute information to criminal investigations of Trump's rivals, Senator Adam Schiff of California, New York State Attorney General Letitia James, whether they violated rules and laws related to mortgages. It's not clear what Pulte will do in this new position. What is clear is that Democrats fear what he'll do in November.
Now here is Congressman Jason Crow, who's also a veteran, also talking about how insane this appointment is.
So today, Donald Trump appointed Bill Pulte as the new Director of National Intelligence. This position, the DNI, was created after 9/11 to help consolidate all of the intelligence between different agencies of the U.S. government to make sure that something like 9/11 didn't happen again, that intelligence doesn't fall through the cracks. This is a very important position that serves as a hub for all of our intelligence agencies. Bill Pulte has no experience in national security and intelligence. In fact, he's a finance guy and is currently the head of the Federal Housing Finance Administration. And he's going to remain the head of the FHFA, actually. So he's going to do two jobs, one of which he has no experience in, which is going to make Americans less safe, less secure, and it frankly is a mockery of a really important position within our national security.
All right, there you go. Jason Crow cut off there. Sorry about that. But let's move on. I've got Scott Pelley, not from recently, but I just thought it was apropos to play this clip of him accepting the Walter Cronkite Award. I think this was actually last year, but here it is.
There was a time when things were worse. You have to go back a little ways. It was 1798. But that's when the Sedition Act was passed, and it was literally codified in law. It was against the law to criticize the federal government or any member of Congress. Editors and reporters went to jail in that period of time for doing their jobs. Fortunately, there was a sunset on that, and 2 years later in the Jefferson administration it went away. But Madison was asked in 1800 what he thought of the Sedition Act, and he wrote in his letter from Virginia words that I think encapsulate this moment better than just about anything I can imagine. Madison wrote that freedom of the press is the right that guarantees all the others. And I am so honored to be in a room with my colleagues who are working so hard every day, taking risks every day to make sure that right endures. Thank you so very much.
All right, Scott Pelley. There you go. Profound. Good stuff. Going to be really interesting to see what happens next for him. And finally, let's wrap it up with a little comedy. It's our new friend Jason Salmon, who was on the show a couple weeks ago. Remember when I interviewed him a couple of weeks ago? I actually heard from our friend Talmadge, longtime listener. Talmadge texted me yesterday and said, I really liked that interview. Many of you reached out to me and said how much you enjoyed that. So if you haven't heard my conversation with Jason, absolutely go back and listen to it. And here he is now. You can follow him and watch these on his Instagram channel and everywhere else he posts them. Always good. Another weird week.
Ceasefire edition. While Rubio quietly surrendered. Another weird week. Ceasefire edition. While Rubio quietly surrenders to Russia, America's running out of munitions, allies, and ways to pretend we're not just trying to get back to what Obama had in the Middle East. We're shooting $1 million missiles at garage drones, and it's going so poorly that Iran is actually letting their people use the internet again. president said an agreement was largely negotiated, but he also thinks he weighs 225 pounds, so maybe he just doesn't understand what large means. Old San Antonio Bone Spurs celebrated Memorial Day by bumbling through a speech about those folks he calls suckers and losers. He showed off schoolyard insults, criticized former presidents, and then refused to meet with wounded soldiers after his bi-monthly annual physical. He said everything was perfect, which is a word Do Me a Favor Flav understands less than large. And it's probably normal that he couldn't get to his son's wedding or his own Camp David meeting or properly pronounce the word hallowed. There was construction for the UFC at the White House and destruction of CBS on 60 Minutes. South Carolina rejected redistricting, and the Texas GOP decided it was time to restock the swamp. Rubio says no one with Ebola can enter the U.S., which would have probably been easier if we hadn't gotten rid of most of the folks whose job it was to keep outbreaks from getting here. We defunded USAID and left the WHO, and we're spending less on World Cup biopreparedness than I did on my coffee this morning. We're trying to invade Cuba. We paused military aid to Taiwan, and they fired the person who was in charge of intelligence. Metaphor, anyone? They want to put the president's face on money. Justice Alito's son actually works for the president, and if that's not Nepo baby enough for you, the president's son just happened to join the board of a company that just happened to get a $620 million contract from his daddy. The Pope warned us about the dangers of AI, while the NASDAQ changed the rules to make it easier for Elon. Because while Americans struggled to fill up their tanks, billionaires were busy inflating their value, fleeing the country, and exploding their hobby rockets. Lutnick bribed his way out of testifying under oath. They put a gag order on federal employees, and Mark Wayne Mullet doesn't understand how international travel works. John Duffy had to explain, and that man's busy trying to blame his vacation fiasco on Pete Buttigieg. But the most corrupt is still the DOJ. They got caught erasing criminal info, so even child predators get to dip into their J6 slush fund. Their misconduct got cases dropped for the Broadview 6 and Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who, it turns out, is far less criminal than the Attorney General himself, all while the former AG tries to get the Lutnick treatment for her congressional testimony. We found out she has thyroid cancer, and I would never wish that disease on anyone, no matter how bad you did your job. In fact, I pray her cancer disappears. At the exact same moment they release all those files. Have a good weekend. Stay ornery.
Love it. There you go. Jason Solomon. So good. And now it's time to get to my guest, who's also very funny and very smart. That's what we love and look for in our guests here whenever possible. That's the premium guest, I would say. And Dr. Andrea Jones is that type of person. She's got a PhD in data science. And she's also a comedian, a podcaster, a performer, an acrobat, a storyteller, and a great guest on your podcast. Go check her out, support her, follow her, and watch her Instagram experiment that she's been doing where she has to make a video every day for 100 days. I think I'm going to try to copy that. It's Jones Rooy on Instagram. And Jones Rooy, right now, we had a little audio issue. We had to switch microphones. The second microphone isn't as good, but you couldn't hear the first one. We'll figure it out in future appearances, but let's do it right now. Very excited to have Dr. Andrea Jones Rooy back. And, you know, some Andreas and Andreas are fussy, and they will call you out, not unlike Caroline and Caroline. That happened to me once. Carolyn. I'm sorry, Carolyn.
They are not interested in being Caroline.
So if you say to somebody, it's Andrea, and then they immediately or the next day, you don't correct them, you know, it's a small...
And that has caused me problems because I don't correct because I don't care that much. And also when I get drunk, I say Andrea myself. And so, you know, I've had too much to drink if I'm like, or I say Andrea. That's what I say. So I don't care. But that's how you know I've had too much wine.
Yeah, I do the same thing. When I drink too much, I'm like, it's Petter.
Pieta is what I thought. But,
it's pedo. What? I've really had too much to drink. So, okay, well, I think...
But yeah, I won't correct people, and then, like, years later, they'll be like, why didn't you tell me? I've been saying it wrong. And you're like, because I really don't care.
I have two other names where I've been corrected, and I still feel the sting. It was...
Really?
I kept calling her Michelle. It was Michelle. And my friend Maura Quint, I always said Maura. It's really Mara. And I'd been saying Maura publicly for years. She never really corrected me.
Those are close.
Pretty close.
Maybe I'm applying my own self lens of not really caring to people who probably do care. I had a friend, I will do you one better because this is a competition. I knew someone in college who I am convinced could not say her own name correctly, but kept correcting everybody else. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Outrageous.
She would be like, she would say, hi, my name is Tara. And we'd say, hello, Tara. And she'd say, that's not it. And we'd say, Tara? She'd say, yes, Tara. But she said Tara. I'm sure of it. Years of this.
No.
She was gaslighting us all before we even had the word.
I would, if I were a woman, take out a leather glove and slap her across the face with it. But not as
you don't have to be a woman for the leather glove.
Oh, you don't? Oh, great news.
We're gender inclusive on that. Yeah. We got together as a group.
And you can get hired to run a Republican organization.
Oh, great.
If you have any domestic abuse or battery charges or even allegations, you will get promoted.
That's right.
This is your second appearance here. Your first appearance, I want to say, we got such great feedback. Everybody loves you. They loved you. You loved you on the show, joining me. So
it was lovely to be here, and I'm thrilled for the chance to shatter whatever positive impression they may have gotten.
There you go.
so everyone loves a sequel. Yeah.
You have just returned from Japan, I believe. You lived in China.
Yes.
And I feel like you're an Asia-phile. And what is with you?
Explain myself as I just eat with chopsticks for no reason. I don't know that I would say Asia-phile. That has sort of a strange quiet again. All right, maybe I'll just go back to the other mic. This is just my laptop mic. Is this better? Should I just leave it here?
You're much louder. It's not the same crystal clear as the mic.
The resonance of my glorious songbird voice. You're hearing me in Spanish? Muy bien, amigos.
All right.
Hoy día hablamos en español, Pedro.
Gracias. Muchas gracias. Que tengas buenas noches. ¿De dónde es el baño?
Bueno, Estados Unidos.
If you can speak Mandarin as well?
I can speak Mandarin, yes.
Say something now.
Top tier jerk. 我姓钟,我叫钟路言. Ni hao ma?
Oh.
Yeah.
Did you
I just said my name. Yeah, and then I said something filthy.
I was deeply offended.
Soila backpack. No, I lived in China, so I studied Chinese in college, and then I did my dissertation on authoritarian censorship, and so then I had a faculty job at NYU's Shanghai campus for 3 years. But then I hadn't been back for years and years, and so this was my first time back in East Asia, and it was for a conference in Kyoto, which was very nice.
You were in Japan. That's a whole different country than China.
It's a whole different country, yeah. And I have a kind of hubris or ego because I lived in China. I'm like, I understand Asia. I understand Asian languages. And Japan, some of the characters are the same. They have 2 other alphabets that I told you. Anyway, I was very quickly reminded that I don't know fuck all about Japan. And struggled to get so much as a matcha. So,
do you know enough to know if those 2 nations and their torrid past they've gotten over it? Do they hate each other? Do they think they're better than each other?
Speaking as a third party who has nosily asked people from both countries what they think, my sense is it's similar to the U.S. and various other countries that we, if you can imagine, there might be 1 or 2 that we don't get along with. And it's one where my sense is that generally people are like, okay, person to person, we're both reasonable, and we realize it's our governments that are mostly screaming at each other. And I was speaking with a Chinese colleague at this conference, and I asked her if she felt uncomfortable being in Japan, and she said, well, no, but I don't advertise that I'm from China. I'm not going to walk around, with a flag and speak Mandarin super loudly. Just like we probably wouldn't do that in insert country.
Is it weird that I do that here?
Speak Chinese loudly
and carry a flag.
Yeah.
Poorly, loudly.
It's not weird at all. I like it. I find it very inclusive. Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of things that I wanted to talk to you about in politics, specifically. I want to talk about the litmus test and what's going on with Democrats. But real quick, I didn't ask you this if you're kind of read in on it. I know you just got back, right, from Japan. But did you see
yesterday.
Did you see this latest controversy around Graham Plattner at all?
Only hairs of it. I saw that there was something and that he was defending himself, and then I fell asleep.
Well,
so is this the kind of content your viewers want?
No, because let's do this hypothetically then, because I don't even know the specifics either, and I actually don't think a lot of people do. But it sounds like the Democrat Senate candidate Graham Plattner, he it sounds like he's married. He's been married for, I think, 3 years. And it sounds like behind his wife's back, surreptitiously, he was using apps to meet and text women, probably under a pseudonym, probably not showing his face, sexting, texting. And I think that it's a question about ethics. Obviously, if his wife didn't know, then, and that's between them. But I almost want to be like, is watching porn bad if your spouse, if your partner doesn't know? But that's not even necessarily the conversation. I just kind of wanted to ask you, and I don't know about your personal life or anything, but like I've learned as a single, I've been separated now for 3 years, and all I want to say is like it's a whole different world out here in terms kind of what's acceptable. And all I'm saying is if you're having a consensual conversation or text, and then there's apps. You can go on and masturbate in front of people. There's all kinds of things you can do that I didn't know existed because I met my ex-wife when I was 25. There was barely an internet. And so I'm learning that there's all these things, and there's also a whole kind of world of judgment and ethics around it. And I just think it's worth trying to understand that world and what people are doing, because it's not like he was necessarily abusing a woman or doing something without consent. It's between him and his wife is my understanding. So even if you don't know the details, I wonder if you have any thoughts about the way the world is now and what is kind of appropriate and ethical for a public person, for a person who's privately. If you have any thoughts around that. I should have told you I want to talk about that.
No. I'm always happy to talk about things that I wasn't planning to talk about, including opinions on Luxembourg. But no, I mean, if that's the situation, I agree with you to the extent that it sounds like there's nothing illegal if it's consensual with him and the people he's texting. Ideally, his wife or partner knows about it, and so it's all above board. But it is mostly between them. The point that I can be most sympathetic to people who are being critical of him for it is like, when you elect someone to office, you're not just electing their policy stance or their personality, which we know from the MAGA movement, you're only voting on their personality. But regardless, you are voting for the whole person. And so it's nice to feel like the person you're supporting is a good person. And if you get information that suggests that they're not a good person according to your definition of it, then that can be concerning. It doesn't sound to me, I mean, obviously if he was doing something, that was a crime or actively harming somebody or whatever, right, where it doesn't cross a line for me to rule him out as someone I might support based on that. But I could see how it could. And I also, I think we should maybe, I'm sort of thinking this out loud, hold our candidates to slightly higher standards than everyday life people, because they are supposed to represent us in some way. That said, and this isn't an excuse, but Lordy, there are candidates, there are very successful politicians who've done way worse, who are doing great. So if this is the thing that allows us to not get someone who could be a really positive force in government, then that would be, I think, disappointing to me. That said, I don't know enough about the situation, and if he's, being horrible to his wife and all that kind of stuff, it makes me think less of him.
Bill Clinton, Monica Lewinsky, Eric Swalwell, Donald Trump, everybody, every man in the Trump administration. They're all a different kind. They've all done different kinds of shitty things. And I'm happy to bash men and myself. One thing I would say is before you go bashing, will you show me your internet history?
That's right.
Number one. And number two, and you might push back on this, and feel free to, obviously, but like there are gradations of behavior. And watching porn or texting with somebody through an app or something is not assaulting or non-consensual or, the things that Swalwell clearly did, allegation after allegation, predatory, manipulative, all kinds of things, using your power at work for somebody who's reports to you, et cetera. And so do you think that, my point that there's gradations, and let's take a look at these case by case and not throw all men in the same category as easy and fun as it is to do?
I totally agree with you, and it's unfortunate for both of us because the world, or at least the way we consume and talk about the news and media these days, the world is not set up for gradation or nuance or even like sort of levels of distinction. It's all very all or nothing, black or white. And I actually wrote an article for 538 a million years ago during Me Too. I don't know if you and your viewers remember that movement that solved all problems for women forever. But I wrote a piece during that time. It's been great in living in a predator-free world ever since then. I wrote a piece at that time, basically with a colleague called Catherine Castile, and we wrote a piece that said something like, "We need more words for sexual misconduct," because as the Me Too thing was really like getting traction and getting, every person every day, like 3 new names would be revealed for something horrible. And it's like, I realized we were starting to talk about like the Aziz Ansari with like the bad date and the weird wine in the same breath as Louis C.K., in the same breath as Bill Cosby. And so we spoke with a bunch of lawyers and equal rights activists and things like that. And basically it's hard to say the grading. I was like, let's get a scale, 1 to 10. How bad, right? And some of the lawyers were very careful to be like, well, if you experience someone grabbing your arm or whatever, you might feel uncomfortable to some extent, but it might bother other people more and other people less. So there's not like a universal gradation, though there's still like manslaughter, involuntary manslaughter, right. First degree murder, second degree. So I was like, somewhere in between, everything is subjective and nothing is objective, and it's only 0 or 1. So that's a long way of saying that I totally am with you, that it's like there's a difference between this guy turning out to be a pedophile or
covering for
raping
pedophile.
People. Yes. Versus what it sounds like he's doing. But even just saying that, you could imagine me getting clipped separately and being like, Andrea here doesn't care about families and values and women. So it's very, very hard to speak in any kind of nuance in today's world.
I love being live because we get to see comments. And I also, again, I love it because a lot of these people I know really well. And a couple smart comments from my friend Kim, who is an average person. And mom, specifically mom. Kim says, but I'm not running for office. Good point. If we're talking about that threshold, and I think you made that point, running for a public office, principal of a school, that's different than you're the IT lead at Apple. But, and then Kim says, how many red flags are too many? And when we're talking about Graham Plattner is what she's referring to, and that's the debate happening right now. And I wonder if you have a take on that. My quick one is, I don't love the red flags that we're seeing from this Graham Plattner, the tattoos, the comments he's made, a lot of weird stuff that he said on Reddit and so on. I don't love a lot of it, but I do love Democrats having control of the Senate to save the planet and do good things. Like I saw some commentator who I like, I forget who it was, like I would crawl across broken glass to vote for Graham Plattner with all of the red flags. And then Rachel says in the chat, and I should say Rachel I know works on domestic violence, she's against. And Rachel says it's hard to grade.
For or against.
It's hard to grade these without tipping into grading the victim experience. Another great point, except for in this case, that's my point. I don't think there were any victims, but Graham Plattner's wife, and we've heard from her, and she's cool with it. Is what I feel like. Like, she's not cool with it. He knows that. It's between them. Hey, Graham.
Right.
No more jacking off videos or whatever weird thing he's doing, but consensually with another woman, or maybe he was lying to them about not being married. Who knows? But that's between them. That's like watching porn and stuff. Like, you didn't, as far as I can tell. So that's my take. What is your take on too many red flags for this guy or the Democratic control of the Senate? Maybe it's not the right
one of the things that stood out to me actually from one of your comments, I guess this might have been Kim as well, if that is DK and Nyborg.
Yeah, that's Kim. That's Kim.
Who made a comment slightly earlier about super online people, which is, I think, a good point, because there's sort of two realities or two information ecosystems that we could be choosing to work from. One is what actually happened and what did this guy do and what does his wife know and did she agree and what about the people he was texting and how bad was that? There's sort of like the reality of it, and of course we can't know inside the heads of the various people and if anyone was a victim and all of that, but they're sort of as close to reality as we can get.
If they were, they could. I wouldn't envy them, but they could come forward. I don't think there was I think this is what I'm trying to say. Like, people don't know these technologies that exist where you can come up with a name. I'm Soldier Boy 1, And here's my dick.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I'm lady.
Yeah.
I'm man killer. Here's my parts. Or just talking. There's so many different chats and channels and apps for this.
Right.
It's a crazy.
And I'll be dropping my links after the show if anyone wants to check mine out. Yeah.
Quite a tease to get people to stay to the end.
There we go. But I think there's also another reality that, quote unquote reality that we're in, which is one where you only get bits and pieces of the news. Like, this story is going to land with a ton of people who already don't like him, whether they're on the left or the right, or who don't really pay much attention to politics. And most voting and most decision making among American voters happens from voters who are not that informed and not paying attention to the extent that you or I or your audience are. And so they are going to react to whatever handful of bits of news kind of bubble to the top in this story. And you can imagine the sorts of pieces that will bubble to the top of different, CNBC versus Fox versus whatever. So what we're going to see is a reaction to that second category. Whereas you and I and your audience are talking about that first category, which is what actually happened, how bad was it? And this gets to your broader question, and I don't have a good answer, which is, what are we voting for? The future of our country or our conscience, given that we don't like what one guy did? And, what's the trade-off between red flags at an individual level and a sense that, he's probably one of the more likely candidates who could help us get back control in the government. And the ideal answer is we have someone who doesn't have red flags, who also does well, but that doesn't seem to be the reality that we're in. And so one thing I've been thinking about going into the primaries that are happening soon and the election this fall is, when we think about who we're voting for, think about it in terms of who is it that I want to be arguing with or trying to persuade once they're in office, as opposed to who do I think matches my views or is an above board person 100%. Like, that's my personal view from just a utilitarian perspective, given where we are. Like, I don't think that what I'm seeing is enough to not vote. I'm not going to vote for Graham either way, but it's, at the moment, I think the picture is big enough that I'm willing to overlook some red flags. But if more comes out that's horrible, then I would change my mind. And I'm open to being persuaded otherwise.
That's all good points. I laughed because my friend, I read it in the chat. He's always so funny. Benny writes, all I know is Anthony Weiner must be losing his mind over this.
Well, remember, it's so funny. And this is that second reality where it's like sometimes people doing horrible things is bad for them. Like, and maybe this was just a simpler time, but was it John Edwards who's basically, his candidacy fell apart when everyone learned he was cheating on his wife who had cancer? And it's just like, there's too many red flags there. And he just went from like a viable candidate to nothing overnight. And so, and Anthony Weiner, poor guy. Also, very quickly, the world was like, we're not interested in what you're doing. I mean, what he was doing sounded worse insofar as you can grade these things. But
right. Very good points. Both of them. Very good points. And it leads us to the main point that the other day you and I were chatting offline because you posted something. And then I was like, this is a conversation. Let's just have it on the show. Mm-hmm. And it was about this conversation that we need to keep having. It's really important that I think we have it and discuss it in a smart and thoughtful way about kind of this litmus test, and as you refer to it, I think you used the phrase imperfect allies, and unpack what you're talking about and what you were referring there. And if there was a story, a person, a moment that was the catalyst for it, it could be any day, I suppose. I kind of want to know more about it because I think it's a super important issue and topic to unpack. Debate, discuss.
Sure. No, I'm glad it resonated with you or that you picked up a thread to talk about it because I was just resharing something random that I had read, so I can't claim credit for the lovely phrase imperfect allies. But the spirit of this post that spoke to me and then I shared and that you and I spoke about was that in a world that we are currently in, and maybe in any world, but particularly now, we are, and if you say we as sort of the general left, the general Trump resistance, the general pro-democracy group, like I'm thinking of this in very, very broad terms in terms of just kind of keeping our country functioning as opposed to, tweaking I want to get us to a world where we can actually argue about policy, but I don't think we're there. I think we're in a world where we need to just get the government working again. Yes? And so I think there we need to be comfortable with what this person called imperfect allies. And what I interpret that to mean is someone with whom you agree with on a couple of things, but don't agree with on everything. And so most of us have, say, 15 to 20 top policies, guns, abortion, this, that, climate, name the things. And most people on the left and most people on the right do agree on most things. It's actually something that in political science, the research has showed over the years that more often than not, we're politically sorted. So if I'm liberal on one thing, I'm liberal on everything. If I'm conservative on one thing, I'm conservative. And it didn't used to be like that. What's happening now, and I think everyone is experiencing this, is if I'm liberal on 14 things and conservative on that 15th thing, the other liberal people in my circle will ostracize me and say, you're wrong because of your view on this thing, Graham Plattner, climate, vaccine, whatever it is, right? And these people are relatively rare. We see the left getting split apart on Israel-Palestine. We've seen them get split apart on other issues, maybe around DEI or something like that.
Just to interject, the quick point is we see it right now during this primaries, and the other, as you didn't say, but I'll say publicly, I also whinged to you because on Saturday night, this woman that I work with on the Board of Education campaigns got really mad at me over the primary, our primary in New York for our congressperson. And so it's also just about the actual who are you going to vote for in the primary, and do they line up with you, and so on. That was all I was going to interject. You were on a flow, and I'm sorry.
No.
But like it's
you're
really happening in this moment right now.
Well, I'm glad that you shared that, and I'm sorry you experienced it, but I think it actually brought to life for me why this is so important, because this is something that's sort of in the abstract. It's easy to say, like, you should be able to agree on some things and disagree on other things, but seeing how difficult it is to actually do in real life, and I am perpetually disappointed and frustrated when I see people, and I need to watch it in myself, when I see people, someone posts a view about something vaguely political that other people disagree with, and you just shut that person down forever. Like, well, we shouldn't listen to that person anymore. Like, well, they're not. And you see the kind of, liberal purity test taking off. And I saw a little bit of reprieve from this during the murders by ICE in Minneapolis, where some people were coming in and saying, hey, I don't think police officers should murder people in the streets. And then a few other people said, well, where were you during George Floyd? And then other people said, okay, this isn't the time for that purity test. Like, if someone wants to step in now and push back on government brutality, then let's welcome them in. And so it's a debate that we've been having for years and years on the left. And I think it's playing out in real time in this moment, because it is the case that we are all kind of looking for, and again, I'm guilty of this, looking for our Goldilocks candidate. And one thing that's nice is, you think about like ranked choice voting or primaries in some places where you actually have a wealth of choice. You actually get to go through the democratic process of being like, what does Mamdani stand for? What does Lander stand for? What does this person do? And really think about it. And maybe in the primaries that's appropriate, but then you see, we get to the presidential level or we get to other levels where we just rule people out because we disagree with them on one thing and they're therefore impure, and then we lose control of the government.
But this whole issue, like, I support the candidate that is this way on this issue, and as Kim inserts in the chat, was it Mamdani who said, if you're with me on 9 of the 12 things, vote for me. If you agree with me on 12 of 12 things, see a psychiatrist. Right.
Yeah.
Or any version of that point. But I'm kind of almost like, I've been covering politics and involved in politics for such a long time. I feel like, and I'm a policy guy and I'm very principled, but I feel like we talk so much about the issues and not enough about the person. And the point I would make is Bernie Sanders was a great messenger for a couple of reasons, but one, because he was never bought and paid for by any special interest. And two, because he was very on message. And three, because that message was one that was whatever you want to label it, democratic, socialist, income inequality, and so on. He was very on message. But he was also an old, weird-looking, his hair's all over the place, his Brooklyn accent, he was Jewish, though that doesn't seem to animate his life. All those things matter. Is he married? Does he have kids? Is he empathic? Is he thoughtful? Did he ever have an experience in a foreign land? So I think a lot more also about, is this person going to be good at running a committee when it comes time for justice? And are they good at questioning a witness? And how are they on the stump? When I think of the best candidates that I personally like, the ones that certainly share common views policy-wise with a Bernie Sanders, but that are as good-looking, funny, and tough as Mamdani and AOC. Those two vessels, those two actual people are so fucking attractive and charismatic and likable and tough as hell. They're the perfect candidate and the right message. And so I feel like people are so often going issue by issue and not realizing the rest of the role is you got to question people. You got to be tough. You have to you have to be a good leader. You have to get people, convince other people over here to vote for this policy. I'm done talking now, but I feel like
go ahead.
I feel like that's just something that really we don't ever talk about because it's hard to talk about. How do you measure such things? I tried my best to measure them in that long diatribe.
I mean, you're tapping into a couple of things. One is a big tension in political science and in other people who are thinking about politics, which is when you elect someone to be your representative, whether it's a president or an actual representative or a mayor or whatever, are you electing them because you have assessed them holistically as a person, as a persuader, as a physical being, and also in terms of their policies, and you say that's the person I want going into battle for me or going into legislate for me? Or are you picking the person who is closest to you in every single way and you think they're going to just be your avatar? And I think if you're in the former category of like, I just want to elect a person who I think will do a good job when he goes in there, you are doing a more holistic view. And I actually think you've tapped into that. Do you remember, was this the George Bush Kerry election? That's how old I am. Where the whole thing was like, the president who wins is the one that I want to have a beer with.
Yes.
And there is, we all kind of made fun of it, but there's some wisdom to that, which is like, you want to know that the guy making big decisions that will affect your life, whether on a local or national or global level, is someone that you would want to be around or would trust to make the right decision in a new situation. And so it's sort of like, auditing a friend or a partner or something like that, as opposed to just picking the person who matches with your ideologies. The problem, I think, is that in terms of the imperfect allies, is that we tend to then look at their voting records or look at their policy stances and be like, there's one I disagree on, therefore the whole thing goes in the trash. I think, and maybe you could do that on a personality level too. It's like, I think Bernie is great, but I don't like that hair, so I'm not going to vote for him, right? Like, that's also a kind of imperfect ally.
Well, it's not. Nobody ever really was like, I'm sorry I mentioned his hair, but I was trying to. I'm trying to describe the whole Bernie Sanders experience, and
But it's like, do I really want to listen to this person be the head of state for 4 years? Like, that's a fair thing to think about. I think it matters,
and I think it's even more superficial than that. And that's why I'm being realistic. Yeah. I want someone who, when they talk, people are going to listen because they're good at talking. I interviewed Bernie Sanders dozens of times on my old show. I was on the train forever. I've always, had plenty of criticisms like everybody. But regardless, my point is more about politics is perception. You want to have a beer with. And the other point that some people sometimes made, people used to make this about Obama a lot. I think a lot of that was racism, but still, they say this about liberals a lot. I don't like him. I feel like he's talking down to me.
Right.
I generally don't feel like people talk down to me. I think they're just smarter than me, and I can't keep up. Like, I feel really intimidated when I walk in. I know that I'm super masculine.
Yes, of course.
But I feel like when I walk into a hardware store or like the mechanic, I feel very insecure because regardless of how super masculine I am, I don't know that much about my car engine.
Wow.
And I feel intimidated, but I don't feel talked down to by the mechanic.
Right.
Because he's a fucking mechanic and I'm not.
I was thinking about this. So this conference I went to in Japan, I was with every other person in the room was much more successful, accomplished, smarter than I was. And it made me feel bad and dumb. And that's an uncomfortable feeling. So if you're talking to someone like Barack Obama and like, wow, he's really smart, you might feel like they are talking down to you. I personally, even though it's uncomfortable, I personally would rather have a leader or other people in my life who are smarter than I am and make me feel dumb than people who are dumber than I am and make me think, what the fuck are we doing? I don't know.
My friend Nick just put in the chat, I feel that Pete specifically talks down to
I mean, Pete's talking down to us all, but
literally asked Andrea to put her chair lower than me, but she refuses.
Yes, I'm actually down here.
Thank you.
So, that's like those old sexual harassment ads. Do you remember those? Sorry, not ads. Awareness.
Am I looking down and yelling?
Yeah,
right.
sexual harassment is bad in the workplace.
I think so.
Yeah. The president should be able to make most people feel dumb. Yeah, Rachel, I agree.
Yes,
you know, and there's ways to be smart without being condescending, for sure. But I think if you're feeling talked down to, some of it might be coming from your own insecurities. Like, sure, there are douchebags out there, but they're not usually the smart people. They're the ones who are trying to sound smart.
Exactly. Really well said. You have thoughts on the health of democracy. This is a more macro, big conversation, but you have traveled the world and you study this issue, and you're a data scientist. And so I don't even know how to ask it, but I think I'm going to try, like, is democracy trending, waxing, or waning? Is it democracy versus autocracy or authoritarianism? What is the terminology you use? And then tell me what your thoughts are based on the data and your experiences combined.
Yes. So the general terms are, and it's an oversimplification, are autocracy on one end and democracy on the other end. There's other ways you can think about it in terms of authoritarian regime or dictatorship or other sort of flavors of autocracy, but usually that's the simplified spectrum. And autocracy, it's a little bit of a bias in research, because most research on democracy comes from scholars in the United States and Western Europe and Canada who are in democracies. And so we tend to have a lot of nuanced, detailed words for democracy. And then we either call you a non-democracy or an autocracy and have very few other detailed words. That's changing as autocracies are getting more traction these days. But that is the terminology, and insofar as you can measure such a thing, which is not easy to do, but if you're measuring in terms of, like, do they have free and fair elections? Are people all able to participate? What percentage of people actually vote? Is there an independence of the press? All that kind of stuff. Insofar as you can measure that, which is, we can talk about the methods if you want. Democracy is waning, my friend. It's going way down. And in the United States in particular, the data from 2025 just came out. So these are updated annually. So in the first part of this year, we got the 2025 numbers. The drop in the U.S. democracy scores was the largest and fastest in American history. Congrats to us on our 250th.
I thought it would be funny that everybody's putting up these 250 signs.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen any funny ones. And then, like, the obvious one is 250 years, we're done.
Yeah. Well, I like the ones that say United States with 2026 as the death date. You're like, yeah, that's it.
I haven't seen that.
Yeah. I also will say, so I was in Japan, and we're walking around looking at stuff, and they're like, oh, this temple is from the 650s. Like, what? Like, you know, this thing has been around for 2,000 years. And you're just like, oh, I'm coming from a place where we think 250 years is a big deal, and their shopping malls are older than, you know, not quite that, but it's humbling to be in countries that have a bit more history.
Yeah, and that's most countries. We're pretty new.
Most.
But just
to
go back, there are a number of organizations that measure democracy's health. And if you look at all of the research they're doing and studies that they've done, and we don't have to get into data and metrics, and you can do that with your nerd friends. I just trust you.
Yes,
please. It is telling you that we are on the downside. We are waning. We're headed in what I think, and you think, because we're pro-democracy, I'll speak for you, is the bad place. It's the bad direction overall, but especially, obviously, in the U.S.,
But it is worth noting that it's not just the U.S., and that's depressing. But it is, you know, putting the U.S. in some context. Like, there has been democratic backsliding around the world, and I bring that up not just to say, well, everyone else is doing drugs too, but to say it begs the question of what is going on a more global level. Like, feels more straightforward to say, okay, the U.S., Trump, MAGA, you know, media divide, social media, we can sort of name our things that we think are going wrong. But then you think about the whole rest of the world and countries where there's democratic backsliding. It's like, oh, what's going on that would give rise to such a global phenomenon, even if it is more extreme in the U.S. Like, it is happening in other parts of the world and other countries that have been democratizing, not full democracies, but countries that have been democratizing that have kind of stalled. And one of the hypotheses, it's too soon to say why, but one of the hypotheses for why we are seeing a growth in autocracies and a growth in tolerance for autocratization, as you may be aware, about half of this country doesn't think the U.S. is becoming less democratic, or maybe 40% of the country isn't worried about it. One of the arguments for why we're seeing this globally is that the pro-democracy advocates can't agree. And this goes back to our earlier conversation about imperfect allies, which is that, yes, all of us, and someone in the comments put it this way with like, we all want to be rowing in the same direction, but too many of us are kicking people off the boat if they disagree on something else separate from the broader issue of pro-democracy. And so that's, you know, authoritarian leaders can get really far if the opposition can't seem to get along with each other.
Authoritarian countries, authoritarian leaders, autocracies are not equal. They're very different from each other. And I just want to ask you about China. And because there's an argument for, they would make a strong argument for their system. And you can look at what they're doing, and I can make the argument. And the argument I'll make for China's system, and you can help me with labels and stuff, but a more authoritarian kind of, I don't know, hybrid communist capitalist tenets. China just makes decisions, and they go, and they build, and they do stuff, and they plan long term. And, you know, it's like, I believe they just hit a drum, and they start pumping out solar panels, and then they hit another drum and they start pumping out, you know, microchips or whatever the technology might be, the future of the investment. They go and they do it. They build these buildings. Obviously, we can make all kinds of criticisms. Meanwhile, we're over here with our democracy, and we've got one fucking guy in an anti-democratic body, the United States Senate, Joe Manchin, holding up progress. Joe Lieberman, holding up progress. Like one senator in a stupid body that is not representative and based on the slave times. And so our system is very flawed and broken and slow, and we have to argue forever before we get anything done. I'm not talking about corruption or campaign finance. I'm just talking about our kind of, you know, ideally democracy. We still have these one or two people that can hold everything up. Meanwhile, China bangs the drum. I know that's racist. And then they just build, or do whatever. And I just feel like I'm seeing a lot of smart people. I don't know, and I haven't interviewed too many China experts, and I should, but that are saying the next century is China's because of their system versus ours. I know I simplified it a lot. Smarten it up and tell me if this is a fair or how they see it and what you see of the comparison between these two countries, at least.
Right. Well, I'll give you. I mean, I think your overall summary is accurate. I think you're right to point out that it is a kind of blend communist capitalist system. A lot of people say, oh, you know, China is communist, so obviously they don't have any of the things that we have, and it's actually a hyper capitalist in terms of their economic behavior and markets and the way things work. Yes, the government can kind of weigh in, but on a day-to-day basis, just walking around and being a consumer, I don't feel any different from a capitalist society in the U.S. versus China. But more governmentally, I mean, I can give you two brief anecdotes. One is when I moved to China in 2013, I had been living in New York. I was at NYU, New York, and they were opening a campus in Shanghai, so I was moving there to help build the university there. And I was so upset to be leaving New York City. I was like, I grew up in Maryland. I went to school in Michigan, so I was like tired of being in the middle of nowhere. And I was like, in New York, I was like, I'm living my dream. I don't want to move to China and like the other side of the world in this backwater, whatever. But I had to make money, and so I went, and I landed in Shanghai. I'm walking around the first day. I'm looking up at all the skyscrapers, and I was like, oh, shit, this is the center of the universe. Like, New York City is a sleepy village compared to Shanghai. Oh, wow. Shanghai is, like, if you look, you know, when you come into Manhattan, you see the Manhattan skyline. Shanghai is that times 50. Like, it's just, it's like skyline forever. Which sounds like an ad for Skyline Chili. Shout out to Cincinnati. But it's massive. And it really, like, the East Village is like, okay, you might as well live in a cave. Like, it really, and so from the minute when I landed in 2013 and, like, my world reoriented, I was just like, oh, anyone who's saying that this is the China, like, the 21st century is the century of China is correct. And that was based on just walking around and looking at the skyscrapers and feeling like I was from this, like, even coming back to New York now from Japan and South Korea, you feel like you're going back in time. Like the future is over there. And to your second point on government, yeah, that plays a big part of it. It's not the only thing. There's a lot of manpower. There's a lot of economic development. There's a lot of labor. There's a lot of other factors. But it really is the case that China can make long-term plans and they can get things done quickly. One other anecdote for you is I was there for 3 years. At one point, I left to go back to New York for a month or so, and I came back to Shanghai. And as I landed, there was a big announcement that said, congratulations, we now have 3 new subway lines like lines. And we, as you know, in New York City, it took about 25 years to extend the Q train 3 stops, and people are still mad about it. And so we just can't compete with that. And so one of the things that I am watching out for, and a lot of us are watching out for, is exactly that, is that, like, if China wants to get something done, they're going to do it 1 billion times more quickly than we are. The trade-off is, in principle, and this gets back to the imperfect allies thing, in principle, hopefully, we, the democratic versions, we're moving more slowly, but hopefully we're making, quote unquote, better or more sustainable decisions. Like, China moves quickly, but they've also moved quickly into some pretty disastrous policies, like the one-child policy or the Great Leap Forward or other things that have killed lots and lots of people.
Not having regulations and labor practices and anti-environment.
Air pollution.
Gender stuff and all kinds of crackdowns and surveillance. And the trade-offs are abundant. But it's funny because your second anecdote was going to be my question that I wasn't planning on asking. But I hear people, especially from Asia, but even I was in Amsterdam where my daughter's going to go to college, humble brag, drink. But the transportation, public transportation, you see the difference quickly. It's like, and you mentioned it, I was exactly going to ask, but I was thinking of the train in California that they don't have. Meanwhile, in Japan, I think I read, like, they have a train that gets you from one end of the country to the other in like 7 minutes. I mean, and it's like it took them not that long to build, and we're still over here with slow Amtrak and so on. So transportation infrastructure, you made all those points. Okay, I shouldn't have talked so much because you already said it. But
well, here's one more fun story for you, which is I landed in Shanghai and took a train in. And the train in the airport is called the magnetic levitation train. And I thought, wow, what a stupid translation, or a silly translation, right? Like, what the hell is magnetic levitation? They must mean high-speed rail or whatever, and they just translated it wrong.
No, they mean
magnetic on the train.
Levitation.
It's a magnetic levitation train.
Yeah.
They're like, sit down. No, we're not joking. Like, sit the fuck down. Because it goes from 0 to like 300 kilometers per hour, which no one knows how many miles per hour that is, but it's pretty fast.
You know, I'm pretty sure I knew about that because there's a
I did not until I got
maglev train. I don't want to brag to you. I don't want to blow your mind. You don't know this about me, Andrea, but I did my college internship at the Disney World. And I believe there's
is there a maglev in Disney?
I think that train is a maglev train that goes around the property.
Is it really fast?
No.
Okay.
But it's like futuristic, and why they built it was because it looked so cool, and I think it's efficient.
Yeah.
And it's been there since I was there in 95, so longer than that, like in the 80s, I think. So anyway, all right, last question is this. You've been doing a social media experiment. And I love it. And you hate it, but I love it.
I hate it. I appreciate that.
Andrea Jones Rooy, or Jones Rooy on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
Tell people what you're doing, why you're doing, and how it's going.
It's going badly. I've forgotten why I'm doing it. And what I'm doing is posting every day for 100 days, like a front-facing video. Sometimes I'll toggle between front-facing, but at minimum, my dumb face has to be on my screen, and other people's, unfortunately, screen, once per day for 100 days. And it's because as a performer, podcaster, comedian, blah, 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 it was really bothering me that I felt so hung up and so afraid of that particular kind of showing up on the internet.
Yep.
And so I was like sitting around one day and I was like, enough being afraid of things, and the whole world sucks. And so I was like, what's one thing I can control that I'm afraid of? And I was like, this. So I haven't posted it yet, but I'm about to post day 34. I just realized I missed a day because of the travel, so whatever. But it's day 34 of 100, and I am over it. It's so bad. It was like fun, and it was scary the first couple days, and then it was sort of fun. And then I hit the 25-day mark, and I was like, I'm a quarter done. I know how to do this, and the rest of it will be easy. And it's only been harder ever since. Oh, thanks for the links.
I just put
I don't know. It's like there's the actual act of recording is awkward. The actual act of then having to look at your own dumb face is awkward. Then the like other people are going to see it and say mean things about it is terrible. So I don't know. I've always hated the internet, and I just feel like I can't. In 100 days, or in 70 however many days, if I still don't like it, I'll never post again, but I'll at least know that I'm choosing not to, as opposed to not doing it out of fear.
I love it, and I'm enjoying it. I've been watching them,
thanks.
And I think it's fun, and I love getting to know you and hearing your thoughts on it. I like your face, so I usually just hit mute That's
the move.
That's pretty offensive.
Highly recommended. Yeah. In fact, I'm just going to post myself talking without sound and let everyone else deal with the fact that they can't. Be like, Andrea, we can't hear you. Like, it's better that way.
I really like your face. And
I'm going to do like a blur, though, like a witness protection blur.
How about, I really like your voice and your brain and your thoughts, but not so much your face. Have you thought about just covering the camera and still talking, or putting a post-it?
That could be.
Over
kind of like a radio show.
I
think radio is the word you're looking for.
About that. This was really fun. I love learning from you and talking to you and getting your perspective on all things. I'm
Thanks for having me.
A big fan. I love talking to you, and everybody loves when you join the show. And Kim says, I love your brain, thoughts, and this conversation.
Wow.
All right.
Wow. And shout out to all the people with more than one child. In direct violation of our great Chinese overlord's former policy. But
Kim says the one she has 2 kids, and the one-child policy doesn't seem so bad. And Rachel has 3 kids, and
that's a lot.
She says she's going to get them from camp. I think you should leave them there, Rachel. I did not want to leave my daughter. I used to make fun of my Jewish friends. I'm like, why have kids and then just send them away for the summer? That's no fun. Summer's the best. And then I realized it's not about me, and the experience they have at camp is what makes them so smart, Jewish people. So send your kids to camp and be like Jewish families.
See, my version
for the
is,
whole
and this
summer.
is why it's good I don't have children. My version is like, okay, send him to boarding school, send him to camp, and I can tick the box that I did it. I had children, and then you never have to see them. That's my view on it.
Did you do camp?
Not in the way that I think my Jewish friends did camp.
Right.
Like that seems like a couple summers I would go away for a week or two, but nothing like major.
I went away for a week to lacrosse camp when I was 13.
How was that?
Day 2, I called on a payphone my mommy, and I was crying because I missed her. And my hero, lacrosse player, Syracuse University lacrosse player, walked out and saw me on the phone crying. He's like, "You all right, little buddy?" He was my hero. I was crying because I missed my mama. Who was
what did you tell him? What did you tell him?
10 minutes away, by the way. Is this my first time?
Oh, really?
I was like, I'm just homesick. He's like, it's all right. And he tousled my then hair.
Wow.
I just don't think I ever shared that story publicly, but there you go, everybody. All right.
We appreciate your vulnerability.
Thank you so much. Andrea, thank you very much. Thanks for watching live, everybody. I really appreciate it. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, there she goes. Go follow her on Instagram and her website, jonesroy.com, to learn more about her, listen to her podcast, and support her, hire her to speak, and support her in all the ways. Let her know that you heard her here on the show. And thank you very much for listening to today's episode of Stand Up. You are the greatest. And remember, nothing ever goes away until it teaches us what we need to know. Jon Carroll, take us away.
When the tyrants taunt you and the sirens teach you, better stand up. Stand up. Let the brave meet the challenge, let the weak flee. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. When you're tired of begging, saying pretty please, that's the time you gotta finally get up off of your knees. When you can't see the forest for the burning trees, you got to stand up. Hey, you've been sitting so long, you got the creaky knees, you got to stand up. Stand up. I think you're driving wheels with leaking grease. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Well, there's a whole lot more of us who know what's right. They'll keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. You got to open up the window to let in some light. You got to stand up. That's right. You got to rise up. You got to stand up. You got to stare the devil straight in the eye. We got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear when all you hear is a lie. So get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence. And even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense. And you stand up. Stand up. Point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up. Stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up. Stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up. They had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of a stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change would begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. Alright, we got to speak up, we got to reach up, and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up.